Welcome back, Superfacts Lab Rats. Today, we're diving into the dark and twisted world of history's most notorious female serial killers. We're about to unravel the lives and crimes of 10 women who turned to the unthinkable, who left a trail of victims in their wake. We're going deep into their psyche, examining the possible motives behind their heinous acts. Let's get started. Viewer discretion is advised. Aileen Wuornos. Born in the tumultuous 60s, Aileen's childhood was rough, to say the least. By the time she hit her teens, Aileen was already living on the streets, resorting to survival sex work. Between 1989 and 1990, Aileen killed 7 men along the highways of Florida. Her weapon of choice? A .22 caliber pistol. Each one of her victims, she claimed, had either tried to assault or rob her. Despite maintaining her innocence, claiming self-defense, Aileen was convicted and sentenced to death. Her case and her chilling final words, "I'll be back," continue to fascinate and frighten. Okay, buckle up because we're stepping back in time to 16th century Hungary. Meet Countess Elizabeth Bathory, synonymous with cruelty and vampirism. Born into nobility, but behind the opulence, darkness festered. Allegedly, she believed bathing in blood granted eternal youth. Over a decade, she tortured and killed hundreds. In 1610, she was apprehended and imprisoned in her castle. She died 4 years later, but her legend haunts us still. Let's journey now to the American Midwest to a place called LaPorte, Indiana. That secret's name? Belle Gunness. Belle was a large woman, strong, imposing. She was a serial killer who lured her victims, mostly wealthy bachelors, with the promise of love and marriage. Belle used that to her advantage, placing personal ads in newspapers, spinning tales of a lonely widow searching for love. And men, they flocked to her farm, never suspecting the fate that awaited them. Because once Belle had her claws in them, she'd drain their bank accounts, take out life insurance policies on them, and then she'd get rid of them. In 1908, a fire ripped through her farm, revealing a gruesome discovery, the bodies of several men, including children. Belle, however, was nowhere to be found. The official story is that Belle died in the fire, but rumors persist to this day that she faked her death and escaped with her ill-gotten gains. Alright, prepare to meet a woman who could charm the socks off anyone. Nanny Doss. Don't let the nickname Giggling Granny fool you, though. Behind that sweet facade was a woman who harbored a deadly secret. Nanny had a penchant for poison, and her weapon of choice? Arsenic. Over 3 decades, Nanny poisoned 4 husbands, 2 children, her own mother, a grandson, and even a sister-in-law. That's right, family, friends, spouses, no one was safe from Nanny's deadly touch. And the scariest part? She seemed to relish in it. Nanny would even sit with her victims as they died, offering words of comfort while secretly reveling in their demise. It wasn't until 1954, after the death of her 5th husband, that authorities finally caught on. An autopsy revealed a lethal dose of arsenic, and all fingers pointed back to Nanny. Nanny confessed to her crimes, even admitting she did it for the thrill of it all. She was sentenced to life in prison where she died in 1965. Nanny Doss, the giggling granny, a stark reminder that evil often wears a friendly face. Let's travel back to Victorian England, a time of corsets, propriety, and, well, a surprising amount of arsenic poisonings. Enter Mary Ann Cotton, a woman who used the societal norms of the era to her deadly advantage. Mary Ann Cotton. She was a working-class woman, unremarkable in almost every way. But behind her plain facade was a woman driven by greed and a shocking disregard for human life. See, Mary Ann had a particular way of dealing with life's inconveniences. Arsenic. Husbands, children, even her own mother, all fell victim to her deadly medicine. Victorian England, you see, was a time of high mortality rates, especially among children. So, when Mary Ann's family members started dropping like flies, well, no one really batted an eye. She was arrested, tried, and found guilty of murdering no less than 15 people, though some believe the true number was much higher. She was hanged in 1865, her reign of terror finally at an end. Fast forward to the 1980s, to a boarding house on F Street in Sacramento, California. It's here we meet Dorothea Puente, a seemingly kindly landlady who offered shelter to the city's most vulnerable, the elderly, the disabled, the down on their luck. Dorothea, with her warm smile and grandmotherly demeanor, seemed like an angel to those who crossed her path. But beneath that veneer of compassion lurked a chilling truth. Dorothea Puente was a predator, preying on the very people she pretended to care for. See, her boarding house wasn't a safe haven, it was a death trap. One by one, Dorothea's tenants began to disappear. The police, acting on a tip, began to dig, literally, in Dorothea's backyard. And what they found sent a chill down everyone's spine. Bodies. Dorothea had been drugging her tenants, killing them, and then cashing their social security checks. She was eventually convicted on 9 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison, where she died in 2011. Dorothea Puente, the death house landlady, a chilling reminder that evil often hides in plain sight. Let's journey now to Mexico City, a bustling metropolis with a dark undercurrent. It's here, in the early 2000s, that a wave of fear gripped the city, particularly among its elderly population. The reason? Juana Barraza, better known as La Mataviejitas, the old lady killer, Juana Barraza. A former professional wrestler known as the Silent Lady, she was a formidable figure, strong and imposing. Juana targeted elderly women, often those living alone, gaining their trust by posing as a government worker, offering assistance. Once inside their homes, she'd overpower them, sometimes strangling them with their own clothing, or bludgeoning them with blunt objects. For 2 years, Juana terrorized Mexico City, leaving a trail of bodies in her wake. The break in the case came in 2006 when Juana was apprehended fleeing the home of her latest victim. A witness had alerted the police and Juana was caught red-handed, literally. Juana was convicted of 16 counts of murder and sentenced to 759 years in prison. The old lady killer was not some shadowy phantom, but a woman, a former wrestler no less. Juana Barraza, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. Our next story takes us to 1940s Italy, to a small town called Correggio. It's here we meet Leonarda Cianciulli, a housewife and mother who harbored a dark secret, one that would earn her the chilling moniker, the soap maker of Correggio. Leonarda was a superstitious woman, deeply invested in the occult. She believed in curses, in dark magic, and in the power of human sacrifice. Leonarda became convinced that the only way to protect her children from harm was to offer human sacrifices. Leonarda lured her victims to her home, offering them tea, companionship, a listening ear. Then, with chilling calculation, she'd murder them, dismember their bodies, and dispose of the remains in the most horrific way imaginable. She turned their flesh into soap, rendering their fat into candles. Leonarda confessed to her crimes in chilling detail, even expressing a strange sense of pride in her gruesome handiwork. She was deemed insane and sentenced to 30 years in a criminal asylum where she died in 1970. Our journey takes us now to 1960s England, where a series of horrific crimes shocked the nation and gave rise to a figure of pure evil, Myra Hindley. Along with her lover Ian Brady, she perpetrated the Moors murders, crimes so heinous that they remain seared into the public consciousness even today. Myra Hindley. A seemingly ordinary young woman, she became a symbol of pure evil, her name forever linked to the abduction, torture, and murder of 5 young children. Myra's role in the Moors murders was primarily that of the accomplice. She'd lure the children, often with promises of sweets or a ride in her van, to a desolate area known as Saddleworth Moor. There, Ian Brady would take over, subjecting the innocent victims to unspeakable horrors. For 2 years, Myra and Ian terrorized the Manchester area, their crimes casting a long shadow over the nation. Myra Hindley, dubbed the most hated woman in Britain, was convicted of 3 murders and sentenced to life in prison, where she died in 2002. Her crimes, along with those of Ian Brady, remain a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of humanity. Our final story takes us back to Victorian England, a time when poverty and desperation were rampant, and a sinister trade thrived in the shadows baby farming. Amelia Dyer, a woman whose name has become synonymous with the dark side of Victorian motherhood. She presented herself as a kind, caring woman, offering to adopt unwanted children to give them a loving home, but behind her facade of compassion lurked a heart of stone. Amelia Dyer was a monster who preyed on the most vulnerable, profiting from their misery. See, Amelia wasn't interested in caring for those babies. She took them in for one reason and one reason only: money. Once she had the child and the payment, she'd do away with them, quickly and quietly. Her methods were brutal, often involving neglect, starvation, or even outright murder. It's estimated that over 2 decades, Amelia Dyer murdered hundreds of infants. In 1896, a body of a baby girl was found in the Thames River, a piece of white tape around its neck. That tape, traced back to Amelia, became the crucial piece of evidence. Amelia Dyer was found guilty of murder and hanged in 1896. Amelia Dyer, a chilling reminder that even in the darkest corners of history, there are always those who seek to profit from the suffering of others.